Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I wanted to cover off the e-commerce versus agency business models, mainly because people have been asking me. I've done both, and people just want my opinion on what's best, what are the benefits, pros and cons of each. I've covered it off before, but we'll get into it and see kind of my thoughts on it in 2024. So is one better than the other? Not really. So they've both got their pros and cons. E-commerce to me is far more scalable. Realistically, you could scale to much bigger revenue numbers particularly, but also profit numbers when done well. Agency is much harder to scale, purely because it's just the nature of the business model relies on the more clients you get, inevitably your costs go up far quicker than in e-commerce, because once you have the product, yes, you do need to buy more product. Yes, you will need to spend more on logistics and things like that, but a lot of your costs end up becoming fixed. And so once you start to hit bigger numbers in e-commerce, you don't actually need to spend that much more money comparatively to the agency business model. The downside is it's quite hard to get to that point in e-commerce, particularly these days, because you're going through the period of like 2020, 2021, there was a lot of free money flying around out there, right? So like governments were printing money at that point in time and providing a lot of stimulus, and people just were very cashed up. Fast forward to 2023, 2024 in particular, mainly 2024, and it is much trickier. Advertising costs have gone up, and it is definitely harder. Particularly, like I've seen it with my clients. Not all of them, but the good businesses are still doing phenomenally well. And while it has slowed down a little bit, I wouldn't say it's by any means not a viable business model. It is just very hard to get to the point where it's very scalable. And when I say very hard, I'm more aiming it at a beginner who probably doesn't have the cash flow or the funds to get to that point, because getting to the point of high scalability in e-commerce is it requires a lot of capital. So it requires a lot of money to get to that point, because particularly if you do it right and do it well, you're going to need to buy inventory, and as you scale and you get more customers buying products, you need to spend more money on inventory and more money on ads. And over time, you're going to bolt on services that people provide and fix things in your store and make improvements and things like that. And either you're going to run yourself to the ground doing it all yourself, which is not something I'd recommend, or you're going to spend a lot of money getting other people to do it. And your cash flow is always going to be a juggling act. So if you're not very good at managing numbers and understanding cash flow and how that works, it's a much trickier business model. Flip it to the agency side, where I think for beginners particularly, or someone who wants to do both, you could do both of these business models. And if you've got a good product and you just want to slowly scale it, you could have an agency that targets e-commerce businesses, much like myself. And this is what I did initially, was I used the agency to kind of fund e-commerce stuff, right, on projects. And I still use the e-commerce cash flow, I still use the agency cash flow to fund other projects. So agency is a really good cash flow business because costs aren't very high if you're doing it in a lean way. If you are going and hiring a lot of people and getting a lot of software and adding this and that and just blowing out your costs, then no, it's not, just like any business. But if you're doing it smart, and I run like a very lean lifestyle agency, you can have really good cash flow. We're not saying you're going to be a multi-millionaire, but you will live a life significantly better than most, and you will have plenty of cash flow to invest in other things that down the track, if you wanted to wind it up, sell it, or continue it even in a slower capacity, you totally can. And the agencies I see do well are ones that are quite lean. I don't see, having more than 10 staff being great, and ideally less than 5, ideally even less than 4 or 3, that they tend to do phenomenally well. Like in terms of, from a profit point of view, revenue, those ones that have more staff are doing really well, but they've got a lot of costs and a lot of complexity. The more staff you add, the more complexity, and also obviously the trickier the business becomes to run. In saying that, with an agency, you need to be able to deliver on the service you're providing, and you need to be able to get clients results. You also need to be really good at selling, and that's probably the biggest thing that people don't like, is the lead generation side. Whereas in e-commerce, it's a bit simpler, right? You have a product, you drive traffic to the product. If the product page is good, people convert, and it's a good product, people will come back and buy again. Whereas people will not come back and buy again in the agency model if you're not delivering on what you've said. I see a lot of people just, especially in Facebook groups and YouTube and stuff like that, they're posting going, hey, I got this client, how do I do it now? And my hat goes off to them for trying, but if you don't know how to deliver the service you've sold, you've in essence lied to the person. And if you do a bad job, people, how likely are they to stay and stick around? The reason I've been able to do well is provide a high quality service. So I make sure things get done. I don't take on lots and lots of clients so that, I can't provide that high quality service. I charge appropriately. I still probably am cheap for the high level of service that I provide, but over time I've learned to push that number up to the point where you get a little bit uncomfortable and you just keep pushing until you go, oh, I'm not getting any clients now. I've probably pushed too far. Or if that's the case, then maybe you've done the right thing and you just need to change your marketing approach a bit. But know that if you run an agency, you're going to, and if you run an e-commerce business as well, you need to know how to market. Different types of marketing, e-commerce marketing, and then marketing a service really to business is different to selling products to consumers for the most part, or even if you're doing it to business, it's a different model. It's a different form of marketing, and you need to be comfortable with selling, sales calls, closing, talking to people, and then actually delivering on the service. So in terms of the skills required in both, they're actually very, very big. So my suggestion is, if you're trying either, is to narrow it down. If you're wanting to try e-commerce, stick to what you know, run one form of traffic, or at the very most 2 forms of traffic, and one remarketing and one the main driver. Don't try and do everything absolutely at once on either of the models. And if you're in the agency space or wanting to, really start off as a freelancer, I would say, or go and work at an agency until you get the experience that you're going to be comfortable, or offer to work for very cheap or free for people until you can get some. Even case studies to me are totally overdone. Having them there, yeah, it's great, and I'm sure some people look at it, but unless the case study is really specific to what you are selling and the person that's seeing it, they don't tend to work that well. In my experience, I think they're a little bit overdone. I'm saying that because I'm probably not great at collecting them and making them, but I've found that if you go the content marketing approach with agency, it is slower, but when people come to you, they're pre-sold and they're ready to buy. So you really need to find out which form of marketing either one you want to pick in either of the business models. Stick to it and just keep getting better at it, and understand that it's going to take time. And even in the agency space, it is much harder now than when I first started to get clients, purely because of competition, the number of people in the space, the forms of services that are coming out, people getting burnt by agencies. I guess the best thing you can do is give a really good guarantee, provide a high level of service, and then offer a money back guarantee or something like that. If you want to instill some trust in people. So building that trust is really essential. And I'm going to be honest, I know people don't like to hear this, but referrals are a good method of building a business. A lot of traditional businesses are built on referrals. And if you think about businesses in the past that did virtually no marketing, like accounting firms, for example, lawyers, all businesses that were traditional but did really well and were quite affluent people in society, well, they really relied on referrals. Not many of those ever did any marketing. So if you can build a good enough business that you get referrals, whether it's through a product or a service, you're going to do quite well. So to wrap it all up, either of these models are both viable in 2024. They have both become harder, but both can work. And you could even do both if you wanted to, or use the money from one to fund the other, but you're going to have to do that very, very slowly and intelligently, and be patient, and you can do well in either of those models. It's just about sticking to something and getting good enough at it that people can refer you, word of mouth drives the product, and making sure that the product or service is really, really good. So thanks so much, guys. Nick Arminis signing off here, and I'll see you in the next one.